Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to my YouTube channel, Tutorlini Test Prep. My name is Kyle. I have been a test prep tutor for about 3 years now, and I scored a perfect score of 800 on the SAT Math. And this is going to be a continuation of my walkthrough series, um, hoping to go over in detail every single digital SAT Math question. So the digital SAT practice test just came out. So over the next several weeks, I will be releasing full walkthroughs for digital SAT math practice test 1 through 4. Um, let's get started. I'm going to pause for a second so that I can mark this with a chapter. Okay, so first we're going to start with module 1 of the math section. So this is question 1. And it says, which frequency table correctly represents the data listed? So what you got to know about frequency tables is that the number column is the literal numbers in the data set, and the frequency tells you how many of each of these numbers. So as you can see, we only have 3 numbers in the data set. We have 4s, 8s, and 13s. So right away, anything that does not say 4, 8, 13 in the number column is wrong. So B is wrong and D is wrong. Now, if you count, there are 4 4s, 3 8s, and 2 13s. C is way off base. It says there's 16 4s. Whoa, there's not nearly that many 4s, right? So that's wrong too. So our correct answer must be A. Okay. Question 2. Okay, this is a factoring question. In particular, this is factoring with A equals 1. You got to know this like the back of your hand on the SAT. You probably could use a calculator to help you do this, but I wouldn't recommend that just because this is such a commonly tested skill. So what you do is you set up your earmuffs, each with an x in it, as long as it looks exactly like this, x squared plus bx plus c. And now what we're going to do is we're going to find 2 numbers that add to this number and multiply to this number. So you kind of just have to brainstorm um, numbers that add to 3 and multiply to minus 40. What I usually do is I try to brainstorm factors of 40. The 2 factors of 40 that add up to 3 are minus 5 and 8. So I'm going to write x minus 5 and x plus 8. And that would give us answer choice B. You see, you can also kind of do this by guess and check. Like, if you looked at A, you could do minus 4 plus 10, and you would get 6. And you go, oh, that doesn't add to 3, so that's wrong. C doesn't add to 3. And D also does not add to 3. Okay. If this is confusing you, it's probably because you haven't practiced this enough. So remember, you got to come up with 2 numbers that add to the first number, B, or in this case 3, and 2 numbers that multiply to C, or in this case minus 40. So you need to practice this many, many times. You can find practice on this on Khan Academy. You can find worksheets on this on the Kuda software page. Definitely make sure you know how to do this. Okay, number 3. So just take a second to read this. It says that she's going for a combined total of 14 miles. Okay, so there must be 14 on the right side. So this is wrong. And the 3 goes with the W because that's the speed she's walking at. Always remember distance equals rate times time. So you want to do the rate times the time. In this case, the rate for walking is 3, and the time for walking is W. So we would write 3W for the distance walked, and then we would similarly write 5R for the distance ran. So the answer here would be A. Okay. All right, let's look at question 4. So this one tells us we have a triangle, and I always like to make a picture. So triangle ABC, doesn't matter how you label it, as long as you're consistent. So B is 52 degrees, C is 17 degrees. What is A? So triangles have to add up to 180 degrees. You got to know that. So we're going to do 180 minus 52 minus 17. And if you just type that in your calculator real quick, you get 111. So the answer for this one is D. All right, let's keep going. Okay, so this one asks, this is number 5, it asks about an electrician. Okay, so anytime you see a one-time fee or a flat fee, like 95, 99% of the time, that is your y-intercept. So the y-intercept represents the flat fee or the one-time fee. And then the rate fee, the per unit time fee, in this case the hourly rate, is the slope. So the slope here is the hourly rate. So it asks you what is the best interpretation of the slope, and you would say the hourly rate. So this is the slope, the electrician's one-time fee. That's the y-intercept. We just talked about that, so that's wrong. That's not the slope. C, the maximum amount that the electrician charges. I don't really think such a thing exists. It's a line going up, so there is no maximum. It's just getting bigger and bigger forever. If it were a quadratic function, maybe it would have a maximum, but linear functions don't really have maximum. So that's wrong. And then it says the total amount that the electrician charges. Total amount for what? I mean, if it said like total amount for 3 hours, maybe that would be like a point on the graph or something. But again, not really clear. The important thing that you know is the y-intercept always represents your starting point. Okay, so in these types of problems, the starting point is the flat fee, right? And the slope is the rate of change. So in this case, the rate of change is the hourly rate, how much the person is charging you per hour. Okay, so the answer for that one's A. Let's move on. Okay, so now this is really important. This one says, if one of these tiles is selected at random, so that means out of all the tiles, all right? If it just said out of the red tiles or just the square tiles, you would be looking at a particular row or a particular column, okay? But because it says out of all the tiles, okay, it wants you to look out of all of them. So the total is, the total out of all the tiles is, out of all the things in the table, is always in the bottom right. So this is like your big total or your total. So there's 100 total tiles, and it wants to know what's the probability of red. So now I have to figure out how many red tiles. So we look in the red column, and there's 30 total red columns. And probability is desired over total. So we're going to do 30 over 100. And we get 0.3. You could also leave it as, I guess, 3/10. But, you know, I don't know. Whenever it's a decimal that isn't repeating, I always just go with the decimal because that's just easier for me. But, you know, do whatever works for you. Just make sure you're following these directions on the left about how to input your answer. Okay, so the answer for that one is 0.3. Let's move on. Okay, so this is actually kind of making a comeback. They used to ask about margin of error a lot way back in like 2017, 2018, and then they kind of stopped asking about it for a while. Um, so there's this thing called the confidence interval, which is the point estimate plus or minus the margin of error. So in this case, the point estimate is the 35%, and the margin of error is 3%. So we're going to go from 32% to, and then plus 3, which would be 38%. That's our confidence interval. So our plausible values have to fall between 32% and 38%. So 32% of 50,000, that's 0.32 times 50,000. You could just do that on your calculator. And you get 16,000. And if you do 0.38 times 50,000, that's 38% of 50,000, you get 19,000. So the value must fall between these two. So this is wrong, and this is wrong, so it must be C. C is the only one that falls between 16,000 and 19,000. All right, let's keep going. Okay, so for this one, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply both sides. I don't like this x plus 6 on the bottom. So the first thing I'm going to do is multiply both sides by x plus 6. And we get 55 equals x times x plus 6. And now we, just like any quadratic equation, we want to expand it and get all the terms to one side. So we get 55 distribute equals x squared plus 6x. Now I'm going to move the 55 to the other side, so I get 0 equals x squared plus 6x minus 55. Now if you wanted to, you could use a calculator to help you with this. I'm going to factor it first. So it's x minus 5 times x plus 11 equals 0. So x equals either 5. You set each of these to 0. So x minus 5 equals 0. That would give you x equals 5. X plus 11 equals 0. That would give you x equals negative 11. And the question wants the positive solution. See how it says that? So we're going to just go with the positive one, which is 5. So that's our answer, 5. If you wanted to, okay, what you could do is, if you're using, like, if you have a quadratic solver on your calculator, I use the College Panda SAT program, at least right now. And if you go to quadratics and then click on standard form, you could type in the quadratic. So the coefficient of x squared was 1, the coefficient of x was 6, and the c was negative 55. So see, it tells me the roots are 5 and negative 11. So, just, you can check your work, or if the numbers were really big and you just weren't seeing it, just use the calculator to help you solve it. It's not a big deal. If you didn't know, I didn't know this originally. You are allowed to, there's no calculator section anymore on the digital SAT. So you're allowed to use a calculator the entire time. So I encourage you to learn as much about your graphing calculator of choice as you can, because you're going to be surprised. There's a lot of questions that can be solved just by using the graphing calculator. Alrighty. All right, let's keep going. Okay, so for this one, so exponential functions are functions that multiply by some number or some fraction over and over and over again. That's how they change, right? So when you see the word constant rate, that means it has a constant rate of change. That means it has a slope. Okay, only lines have slope. Exponential functions do not have slope. So the words constant rate tell you that it's linear. So it's not exponential. So this one's out and this one's out. Now it's either decreasing or increasing. And the keyword here, it says it descends from 9,500 to 5,000. So you see descend means to go down, and then 9,500 to 5,000, that means you can see it's getting smaller. So that means it's decreasing. So this one's out. So it must be B, decreasing linear. So it's decreasing because it says descends, and it's linear because it says constant rate. So if they asked you to write the equation of this line, the slope would be, I think, minus 400 because it's going down. So it would be minus 400. So that would be really important to recognize maybe for a future question. All right, let's keep going. Okay, so anytime you see y equals a times b to the x, see how this equation looks exactly like that? A is your starting y value or your y-intercept. And b is your growth/decay rate. You know what a y-intercept is. The growth/decay rate is the number, at least for these types of equations. It could be different if it looked a little bit different. But it's the number that y is being multiplied by when x goes up by 1. So it says, what is the y-intercept? So, well, the y-intercept is a, which is 11. So it must be 0, 11, which is a. That's it. If you forgot about this, if you're like, oh, Kyle, I wasn't sure what this equation means, always remember that anytime you have an equation, and this is what you should probably do this anyway, just to check. Whenever you're looking for an x-intercept, you plug in y equals 0. And whenever you're looking for a y-intercept, you plug in x equals 0. This is super important. Everybody always forgets this, so I'm going to highlight it even though you didn't really need to know it to do this question. So you see, even if I forgot, I could just plug this in my calculator and go, okay, 11 parenthesis 1 12th, and we want to find the y-intercept, so we're going to plug in x equals 0. So to the 0, and you see we still get 11. So that was another way to do it. So always remember that, because a lot of times they'll try to trick you, and they'll make the equation look different, and you can't figure out the y-intercept just by looking at it. So you got to remember, anytime you got to find an x-intercept, you plug in y equals 0. Anytime you want to find a y-intercept, you plug in x equals 0. All right, let's keep going. Okay, so for this one, it says PS is twice the length of arc PQ. Okay, so I'm going to label PQ as x and then PS as 2x. And then the ones across from it are equal. So RQ is also 2x, and then SR is x. If you add all those up, you get 6x, and that will be equal to the circumference, which is the total perimeter, the total arc length, and that is 144 pi. Now, if you divide both sides by 6, you get x equals 24 pi. And now it wants you to find QR. So always make sure you're answering the question at the end. A lot of people would have just put A and moved on. So QR, based on our picture, is 2x. So we have to do 2 times 24 pi, which is 48 pi. So the final answer is B. All right, so I think they have the formula for area of a rectangle on the reference sheet, but you should probably just try to remember that. So area for a rectangle equals length times width. So the area is 76, the length is x, and the width is x minus 15. So this is exactly like the question we did just a couple problems ago. We're gonna distribute and then get them all to one side. So we get 0 equals x squared minus 15x minus 76. And now you could either factor it or use a calculator program to help you. I honestly, if I were doing this, I'm just trying to show you guys everything. But if I were doing this on a test, I wouldn't even factor this. These numbers are way too big for me to do. So I would just for me to do comfortably and quickly, I would just plug it into the graphing calculator at that point. I highly recommend that if your calculator doesn't already do it, that you install some kind of program that can solve quadratics quickly. Anyway, so if you factor this, you get x minus 19 and x plus 4. And the solutions would then be 19 and negative 4. So remember, x is the length. So x is the length of a side, so x cannot be negative. So it must be 19. So we just kind of ignore negative 4. So the answer is 19. Very similar to the one we did before. Okay. Okay, so whenever you see, so by the way, so this is our x, and this is our y. Instead of x and y, they use t and n, but it's the same idea. So whenever you see x is 0, remember we were just talking about this, that's a y-intercept. So to solve this, the first thing I always do, if I don't know what to do with an equation, I always make sure the y-intercept is right. So let's see what happens. So let's plug in t equals 0. Okay, so if we plug in t equals 0, we get n equals 1. Okay, so that's wrong. If we plug in t equals 0 to the second one, we get n equals 1. Okay, that's wrong. And again, if you're not seeing the rules of exponents or how to do the arithmetic, you can just type this in your calculator. This is n equals 604 when we plug in t equals 0. And this is n equals 0.004 when we plug in t equals 0. Okay, so none of these have the correct y-intercept. The only one with a y-intercept of 604 is C. So the answer must be C. I didn't even need to check the other points. I didn't even need to derive this equation. You can just guess and check. And I always think x equals 0 is a great point to guess and check because oftentimes 0 makes the arithmetic easier, right? It makes things go away. Okay, great. So yeah, the only one with that first point is C. So it doesn't matter about the rest of it. It has to be C. Okay, so this is a classic thing that they love to test on. So first of all, right, if you wanted to, you could pull up your graphing calculator or pull up Desmos and just graph these two and see where they intersect. That would be a great way to answer it. However, there's a lot of algebraic questions about this, so I recommend that you understand these notes that I'm about to give you. So no solution, one solution, and infinitely many. This is for linear systems, only for linear systems. So no solution looks like this. One solution looks like this. They cross. Infinitely many, it's the same line on top of itself. So no solution has the same slope and different y-intercepts. One solution just has different slopes. And infinitely many means it has the same slope and the same y-intercept. I highly recommend that you memorize this before the test because they ask lots of questions about this. Again, for this one, you could just graph them, but what if they gave you an algebraic one with instead of numbers, they gave you letters? You wouldn't be able to just graph it. You would have to use some kind of prior knowledge. So anyway, so what I did was, in addition to graphing it, is I just looked at these two, and I saw that the top one had a slope of 1, and the bottom one had a slope of 8. So they have different slopes. So that means they must have one solution or one point of intersection. Solution and point of intersection, same thing. So the answer must be B. I want to point out too that two linear equations can only have 0, 1, or infinitely many. So even if you didn't understand this question at all, you know that it can't have 2 and it can't have 8, no matter what, right? Different types of systems can have 2 solutions, but not a linear system, not one with 2 lines. So yeah, okay, so the answer is B, and I hope those notes I scribbled on the bottom help you. Those are really important. So always remember, no solution, same slope, different y-intercept. One solution, different slopes. And infinitely many, same slope, same y-intercept. Okay. Let's look at 15. Okay, so the points for each red token is the number in front of the R, and the point for each green token is the number in front of the G. And so how many more points is a red token worth than a green token? So we're just going to do 45 minus 5, which is equal to 40. So the answer is 40. Okay, this is exactly what we were talking about before. It's another y equals a times b to the x problem. So remember, a is your starting amount. So there are 44,000 at the start of an observation. So a is going to be 44,000 based on that. And b is what the y values, what the bacteria are being multiplied by every time x, or in this case t, goes up by 1. So you see here how it says it doubles every day. So that means every day it gets multiplied by 2. So that means b is equal to 2. So it must be 144 or 44,000 times 2 to the t, which is d. So this one has the wrong a and b. This one has the wrong a and b. This one's got the wrong b. The only one it can be is answer choice D. So remember, A is your starting amount, and B is how much your y values are getting multiplied by. When it says doubles, that means B is equal to 2. When it says triples, that means B is equal to 3. It could also be a percent multiplier, but let's not get into that right now. Okay. Okay, so we got a diameter of 8 inches. So the radius is always half the diameter. So the radius is 4 and the height is 12. And the formula for the volume of a cylinder is on the reference sheet. It's volume equals pi r squared h. So we're going to do volume equals pi times 4 squared times 12. And you get 16 times 12, which is 192 pi. And that is answer choice C. So really all you had to do is look at the formula on the reference sheet and plug in the numbers. That's it for this one. Always pay attention if they say diameter or radius and which one you want for the formula. For this formula, we want radius, so you have to make sure you change it to a radius first. So remember that the diameter is always equal to 2 times the radius. Okay, I'm gonna be honest. You really should have a systems of equations solver on your graphing calculator for this type of question, because it'll just save you so much time, and there will be no chance that you get it wrong. I'm going to go through it anyway, just for the sake of it. So it wants us to find y. This is called standard form. When a system is in standard form, we tend to lean towards elimination. Elimination tends to be the easier method. So if I want y, I should eliminate the other one that I don't want. So let's eliminate x. So the least common multiple of 2 and 6 is 6. So I want one of them to say 6, and I want one of them to say -6. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply the bottom one by -3 to make it a -6. So we get 6x plus 7y equals 28. And then we get negative 6x minus 6y equals negative 30. And now I'm going to add the two equations. And the 6x and minus 6x, those go away. 7y minus 6y, that's just y. 28 plus negative 30, that's negative 2. So that's our answer. There's lots of ways to do this on the TI-84 plus CE. Again, I just use the College Panda SAT program a lot because I like it. So I'm going to show you now. I can't stress this enough. You really do not need to know. There might be a conceptual question where you have to do this, but you really do not need to know how to do these types of questions anymore because there's no calculator section. They used to put these on the no calculator section all the time so that kids would still have to prove they can do it, but now I can just do this. So the first coefficient is 6. The next coefficient is 7. The next coefficient is 28. And then in the bottom equation, we have 2, 2, and 10. And you see I get x equals 7, y equals negative 2. Wow, that probably would have took me like 10 seconds on the test. And there's, as long as I type it in correctly, there's no way I'm going to get it wrong. So anyway, yeah, I'm just teaching it for the sake of it. I highly recommend you do not do these problems by hand. It's kind of a waste of time. Again, it's a standardized test, so you want to get the question, you want to get the right answer as fast as possible. Okay. Your goal is not to master every concept. Your goal is to get as high of a score as possible. Anyway. All right. So what I would do here is I would draw a triangle. And I'm going to call this, always make sure the right angle is the right one. But besides that, it doesn't really matter how you label it as long as you're consistent. I'm going to just arbitrarily call this one K and this one L. So it says cosine of K is 24 over 51. So so cosine, so that would be SOHCAHTOA. So SOHCAHTOA. So so sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. Tangent is opposite over adjacent. So adjacent from K would be here, and then hypotenuse is here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to label it with the adjacent as 24, and then the hypotenuse is 51. Technically, it would be 24x and 51x. You don't know that they're 24, and you don't know that they're 51. Technically, they're just in that ratio, but it's not going to matter. You'll still get the right answer. So, you can just put 24 and 51 if you want. Certainly, that's what I'm going to do here. Okay, so we need to figure out what that other side is. So we're going to use the Pythagorean theorem. So a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So 24 squared plus lj squared equals 51 squared. And now I'm going to do 51 squared. And I'm going to take over the minus 24 squared. And I get 2025. And then I'm going to take the square root to get the LJ by itself. So the square root of 2025 is 45. Okay, so this guy is 45. And now we're going to do cosine of L. So we're going to do adjacent over hypotenuse. So the adjacent, again, looking at angle L now. So the adjacent of angle L is 45. The hypotenuse is 51. So I get 45 over 51. If you didn't know this, you can simplify fractions on the calculator quite easily. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So you can type it as a fraction by pressing alpha y equals enter, or you can just press alpha and then x. And you can do 45 over 51. And it'll simplify it for you. So it's 15 over 17. Another thing you could do is you could just type it long ways, 45 over 51. And then you could press math, enter, enter, and it'll convert it for you. So whatever's easier for you. I don't know. I do both interchangeably. Anyway, so the simplified answer, which you always want for your final answer, is 15 over 17. So in the answer choice, I would put 15 over 17. And that's the correct answer. All right, let's keep going. Okay, so there's a lot going on with this question, but I'm just going to try to teach you the important bits. Anytime, so when you have a parabola, and a is greater than 0, that means it's facing up. And a is less than 0, that means it's facing down. The vertex is on the very edge. So when it's facing up, the vertex is at the bottom, so the y value represents a minimum. And when it's at the tippy top like this, the y value is a maximum. So you got to know this little drawing that I just put. You got to know that by heart. And anytime you see mention of minimum or maximum, they're asking you to find the vertex. Okay. So if they say, what's the minimum or what's the maximum? They want the y value. If they say, what value of x does it reach a minimum? Then they want the x value. So you got to know how to find both. And there's a million ways to do this. You have to do this from standard form, factored form, and vertex form all the time. This question is in standard form, so I'm just going to talk about how to do it in standard form for now, so that this video isn't too long. So here's what I always do. I always write down a equals 4, b equals -50, and c equals 126. The equation you have to know is h equals -b over 2a. So h, which is the x-coordinate of the vertex, is -b over 2a. So so we get -50 over 2 times 4, and that is 6.25. And that's the answer. So you could stop there. But let's say you wanted to find the y value of the vertex. Let's say you wanted to find the minimum. So what you would do is you would plug in the x-coordinate. So you would plug in 6.25 for x. I go back up here and plug that in there, and I'm just going to do it on the calculator. So 6.25 store as x, and I'm going to do 4x squared minus 50x plus 126. I'm getting -30.25. So the vertex is h comma k. So for this problem, the vertex is 6.25 comma -30.25. So because it says what value of x, then it wants the x value. If it just said what's the minimum, then you would put -30.25. So if it just says what's the minimum or what's the maximum, then you put the y value. If it says for what value of x, then you got to put the x value. Okay, so you got to be very careful. Now I'm going to be honest once again. Like you can get calculator programs that even on non-CAS calculators that can do these questions very easily. So you don't even really need to know how to do it, at least for this question. So I'm going to go into the Panda SAT program, and I'm going to go to quadratics, and I'm going to go to standard form, and I'm going to type in 4, -50, and 126. And you see, It tells me the vertex is 6.25 comma negative 30.25. So the answer is 6.25. So you see, I really didn't even really need to do anything. Yeah, so, okay, so I hope that makes sense. Again, if you get a calculator program that can do this, you really don't need to know how to do this question. But you need to understand what it's asking you. So anytime you see minimum or maximum on a quadratics question, you know it's asking you about, 9 times out of 10, it's asking you about the vertex. So just keep that in your mind. Okay, so 21. So line L goes through 0, 0. And it's parallel to this other line, 8x plus 2. So parallel lines, the first thing that should be going through your head is same slope. So they have the same slope. So the slope of the line is 8. So the slope of the parallel line, line L, is also 8. So we do y equals mx plus b. So b is the y-intercept, the y value in x equals 0. So b is just 0. So y equals 8x plus 0. Okay, plus 0, that doesn't really do anything. So the equation is just y equals 8x. So now we're going to plug in 3 comma d. So d is y and 3 is x. And we get d equals 24. And that's our answer. Okay, great. All right, let's keep going. There's one more. This one looks a little annoying. This in my mind, this has got to be probably the hardest one on this section. So first, you have to know the discriminant. This is an equation that's not on the formula sheet. So d equals b squared minus 4ac. And when d is less than 0, you have no real solutions. This is for quadratics in standard form. When d is equal to 0, you have one real solution. And when d is greater than 0, you have two real solutions. Okay, so for this one, this is called a linear quadratic system. So we have a linear and a quadratic system. So we have to substitute. So there's a bunch of ways you could do this. You could get y by itself in the first one and then plug it in. You could plug y into the top one. Doesn't really matter. I did something kind of weird here, so you don't have to do this again. Like I said, there's a bunch of ways to do this. Just make sure you, at the end of the day, that you substitute for y in some way. Okay, so that's what you want to do when you see these linear quadratic systems. The strategy is you substitute for y. Typically, the easiest way for most people is to just get y by itself in both of them and then set them equal, because then you don't have to worry about using parentheses and all that stuff, right? Anyway, so what I did was, I was like, oh, this is a 2y, and I didn't want any fractions. So I was like, why don't I change this guy into a 2y? So what I did was I multiplied that guy by 2, and I got 2y equals negative 4x squared plus 18x. And now that they're both 2y, I can substitute c into here. So like this. So I get c equals negative 4x squared plus 18x. Okay, same thing. Whenever we get an equation like this, quadratic equation, we expand and we get all the terms to one side. So I'm going to move all the terms to the left side. So 4x squared minus 18x plus c equals 0. And now we're going to do the discriminant. So a equals 4, b equals negative 18, and c is equal to c. I know that's confusing that they use the same letter as in the equation. You got to try to just not let that bother you. There's not really any way around it. All right, so let's do d equals b squared minus 4ac. So we get negative 18 squared minus 4 times c. So we get 324 minus 16c. And now because it says in the question, they intersect at exactly 1 point. So that means it has one solution. So that means the discriminant is equal to 0. So I'm going to set it equal to 0. 324 equals 16c, and then I divide by 16 on my calculator, and I get c equals 20.25. Man, that was kind of a long one, right? So, and that's the correct answer. And if you wanted to check it, you could get y by itself in both of these equations, and then graph them on Desmos, and you should notice that they only intersect once. Anyway, so I hope that was helpful. Okay, so I'm going to pause for a second here. We're about to do now we're going to do module 2A. So if you did really well on this one, you might want to just skip this part of the video because it probably put you in module 2B, which means you didn't end up doing these questions. I would maybe still watch it just so that you can see what kind of questions were asked, just in case those concepts show up even on the harder module, or maybe one day you don't do well and you end up in the quote unquote easier module. So again, I'm gonna make it into chapters so that each module is a chapter. So just watch it if you want. You don't have to watch it, but anyway, I'm gonna go through every question so that everyone benefits from this. Okay, so first thing, whenever the median is the middlemost number. The first thing you want to do is you want to make sure that they're in order. And I see that these ones are in order from least to greatest, so we're good. I count the position of the median is n plus 1 divided by 2. N is the number of data points. I count 9 data points. So 9 plus 1 divided by 2. So I get 10 divided by 2, which is 5. So the fifth data value is the median. So now I just need to count to 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So the median is 77. So the answer is 77, B. Another thing you can do is you can kind of like cross off until you get to the middle, but I feel like sometimes people mess this up. So that's why I wanted to teach you using the formula. Plus, there's going to be other questions that are much easier if you know and understand this formula. So I'll be bringing up this formula in all my videos for all these types of questions. So I hope you find it helpful. All right, next question. Okay, x plus 40 equals 95. So we need to transpose the 40 to get the x by itself. It's being added. The opposite of addition is subtraction. So we're going to subtract 40 from both sides. And we get x equals 55. If you have an equation solver on your calculator, like the TI-84 plus CE, you could just use that if you want. Again, you want to know how to do these questions anyway. So, all right, answer is 55. Okay, length of 17. Okay, so area is length times width, right? So the length is 17 and the width is 7. So now we just got to type that in our calculator. Always remember that the formula, the area and volume formulas are in, most of them, not all of them, but most of them are in the reference sheet. So if you forget, you can look there. So the area is 119. Always check to make sure the units match, centimeter, centimeter, centimeter squared. Okay, so we're good. We don't need to worry about that. So the answer is C, 119. Okay, great. So whenever you do order of operations, remember PEMDAS. So parentheses, exponent, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction. So I'm going to do what's inside the parentheses first. So 4W plus 3W, that's 7W. And now I'm going to do 20W minus 7W, which is 13W. And that is answer choice B. Okay, so this is words to math. So it says y. Okay, so I'm going to write y. And then it says is. So whenever you see is, that means equals. So we're going to put an equal sign. And then it says 84 less than x. So that would be, so for example, what if I had 5 less than 12? That would be 7, right? So 12 minus 5. So it's kind of phrased backwards. You see what I mean? So lots of people would maybe put 5 minus 12, but it's really 12 minus 5. So um, this is something you should do whenever you're struggling with a math problem, is think of a simpler problem. So see how I just came up with an easier one, 5 less than 12? And then I used my number sense to figure out how to write it. That's the kind of thing that you should do when you're stuck. Anyway, so 84 less than x. Okay, so I got to switch them and do less means subtraction, but I gotta flip flop them. So it's really x minus 84. Okay, so that's D. All right, this one was on both, so I guess I think it was on both, so I'll just solve it twice. So see how they simplified this fraction? They changed it from a 24 to a 4. So to go from 24 to 4, you have to divide by 6. So we're going to divide the top by 6, and we're going to divide the bottom by 6. So I get 4 over x plus 7, and you see it says 4 over x plus b. So b is equal to 7, and that's it. Good. Okay, so it says out of 300 seeds that were planted, 80% sprouted. How many of these seeds were sprouted? Okay, so it's asking us to do 80% of the total. So it wants us to do 80% of 300. So all you do is you change the percent to a decimal and you change the of to a multiplication sign. So to change a percent to a decimal, you divide by 100. So 80 divided by 100 is 0.8. Of, we change the multiplication, and we do 300. So now in our calculator, we just do 0.8 times 300, and we get 240. There's other ways to think about this, but that's how I do it, at least for this one. All right, 240, good. All right, let's keep going. So remember, distance equals rate times time. So the distance, she wants to do 24, and the rate is 4 kilometers per hour, and the time we don't know. So we divide both sides by 4, and we get 6 equals t. So it would be 6 hours. So the answer is B. All right. Okay, so for this one, you could either solve for x and you could plug it in, or you could recognize that to turn 6 plus x into 18 plus 3x, you can just multiply by 3. So why don't I do both ways? So 6 plus x equals 9. So if I subtract 6, I get x equals 3. And then I can do 18 plus 3x equals 18 plus 3 times 3, which equals 27. But the other way you can do it is you can just recognize, wait a minute, if I multiply this equation by 3, I get 18 plus 3x equals 27, and I go, oh, that's much faster, right? So if you can kind of spot these shortcuts, it'll save you some time. So a lot of times when they want the answer as an expression, there's some kind of shortcut. So kind of be on your toes. Again, it really didn't take that much longer for this one to just do it the first way. So it's like you don't need to do the shortcut, but I'm just trying to show you every little thing that I can because I want to help you. All right. Let's look at 10. So what is the value of f of 2? So whenever you see this function notation, that means f of. So this is f of 2. So this thing inside here is always your x. So f of 2 equals, so we're going to plug in 2, and we're going to make sure we use parentheses. So always use parentheses. So 2 cubed plus 9 would be 8 plus 9, which is 17. A really good way you can do these types of questions on the calculator without messing up is you can store the variable. So watch, I'm going to press 2 store as x, and I press enter. So now wherever I go in the calculator, x is 2. So now watch, if I type in x cubed plus 9, I get 17. That's it. So you don't even need to know how to do the arithmetic if you know how to use your calculator. Um, this is a lifesaver when it comes to evaluating like really long functions, especially if they give you a negative number, because you have to type in the negative sign over and over again, and it just makes your life so much harder. So storing variables in the calculator, very helpful for the tests. Anyway, so we get 17, which is C. All right, let's look at 11. So it says the monthly payment is 400, and it says X is the monthly payment. So that means X is 400. So it wants us to find F of 400. So I just plug in 400. Pretty much exactly the same as the last question, just with a word problem. You type it in your calculator, and you get 15,400. That's it. All right. What is the value of g of x when x equals 8? Okay, once again, it's asking us to plug in an x using function notation. So it wants us to find g of 8. So we're going to do 10 parentheses 8 plus 8. That's 80 plus 8, which is 88. That is answer choice D. Okay, so for this one, you have to recognize that these two angles form a straight line. So that means they are what's called supplementary. And that means they add up to 180. So x plus 133 equals 180. So x equals 180 minus 133. And you just type that in your calculator and you get 47. So it is 47. Okay, this one would be great to type into the calculator, and I think I'm going to do that at the end. But remember what we talked about before. To find an x-intercept, you plug in y equals 0. So 7x plus 2 times 0 equals 31. So 7x equals 31, or negative 31. So x equals negative 31 over 7. And it says the x-intercept in the question is a, right? So we're going to call that a. And again, that's a negative sign, my bad. For the y-intercept, remember we plug in x equals 0. So we get 7 times 0 plus 2y equals negative 31. So 2y equals negative 31. So y equals negative 31 over 2. And remember, they called the y-intercept b. So we'll call it b as well. Now it wants us to find b over a. So we have to do negative 31 over 2 over negative 31 over 7. And if you type that in your calculator, you get 7 over 2. And that's the answer. I wonder, I think the calculator program I have tells us x-intercept and y-intercept. So yeah, it would be messy because there's fractions involved. So probably not a good idea. Yeah, so always remember, to find an x-intercept, you plug in y equals 0. To find a y-intercept, you plug in x equals 0. There's some confusing fraction math towards here at the end, but again, as long as you type it in your calculator carefully, you'll get the answer, so you don't even really need to know how to do that. Okay, so this is distance equals rate times time again. So the distance is 108, and the rate is 12 centimeters per second, so 12. So remember, speed usually means rate. And t, so we're going to divide both sides by 12, and we get t equals 9. So the answer is A. Okay, so a total of 165, so 165 should be on the right. And it's 37 plus P monthly payments. Okay, so these two should be added. So both of these are wrong. And it says P monthly payments of $16 each. So we're going to multiply the cost of each thing times the number of that thing to get the total cost of those things. So the cost of the monthly payments is 16p. So we're going to do 16p plus 37. Remember, 37 is your down payment. Remember we talked about initial fee, starting cost, flat fee. That's usually your y-intercept. So yeah, so that's another way to think about it. Great. Okay, so the answer is C. All right, so for this one, we can also just pick 2 points, type it in the calculator, and it'll tell us. I'll show you guys that in a minute. So you really don't need to know how to do this, but just in case, it's definitely important, so you want to know it just in case. So the y-intercept is the y value when x equals 0. So you see x equals 0. So the y-intercept is 18. So mx plus b equals 18. Okay, right away. This one's wrong and this one's wrong. Now I'm just going to find the slope by using y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So I'm going to pick the first and second point. So I'm going to do 13 minus 18 over 1 minus 0. And I get negative 5. So it should be y equals negative 5x plus 18. And that is answer choice D. Again, you don't really need to know how to do this one. So you can put a program on your calculator that will tell you lines from 2 points. So I click on 2 points, and I'm going to type in 0, 18, and 1, 13. And I get y equals negative 5x plus 18. Great. All right, so anytime you have a projectile question on the SAT, it's going to be like a downwards facing parabola or quadratic that looks like this. So the y-intercept is your starting height. And the positive x-intercept is the time it takes to hit the ground. And this guy represents, the vertex represents the time it takes to reach your max height and the max height. Remember we talked before about how maximum usually means vertex, so that's kind of relevant here. Okay, so it wants the starting height, the height from which it was kicked. So we have standard form, ax squared plus bx plus c. So c is equal to the y-intercept. It wants us to find the y-intercept. So c is equal to 9. So that's it. Remember, if you weren't sure what letter represented the y-intercept, or maybe it's written in a way that you can't figure out the y-intercept, what you would do is you would just you could plug in t equals 0. So if you plug in t equals 0, that'll give you the y-intercept. Plug in x equals 0, right? X in this case is t, because it's a word problem. So you'll plug in t equals 0 there, and t equals 0 there, and you'll still get a height of 9. This little chart I drew on the left, I highly recommend that you have that down pat, because they like asking about this. I bet this is going to be asked in the future as well. Okay, so for this one, all the x values are 1, 2, and 3. So you just need to plug in 1, 2, and 3. So you can do this on your calculator, or you can do it in your head. 1 minus 3, all right, that's negative 2. Okay, right away, this one's wrong, and this one's wrong. Okay, 2, comma 1. Okay, they both have 2, comma 1. Let's do 3. So 3, comma 6. So if I plug in 3, I get 6. 3 squared is 9, minus 3 is 6. Ah, okay, so you see this one is wrong. It says 3, comma 3. That's wrong. So the correct answer by process of elimination must be B. It's the only one with all 3 of those points. Okay, great. Okay, this one. So first of all, whenever you see, this is function point notation. So whenever you see this is x, y, x, y. So the first thing I do, just to make it less confusing, is translate these to points. So 0, comma 8, x, comma y, 0, comma 8, and then 1, comma 12. Pretty easy to remember. It's just alphabetical order, right? So the first number is x, and the second number is y. Okay, so right away, 0, comma 8. That's the y-intercept, because x is equal to 0. So b is equal to 8. And right away, this is wrong, and this is wrong, because they don't have b equal to 8. And now you just need to calculate the slope. So y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So 12 minus 8 over 1 minus 0, that gives you 4. This guy has a slope of 12, so he's wrong. So it must be D. And again, as long as you understood the function notation, you really don't need to know how to do this question, because there's no calculator section anymore. So you can just go in, and especially if you have the Panda SAT program from College Panda, you can do 0, 8 as one of your points, and then 1, 12 as one of your points. And it tells me y equals 4x plus 8. So wow, that would have been even faster. That would have took me maybe, at least saved me like 10 or 20 seconds. So very handy. Very, very handy. Okay, so we're going to get k by itself. So whenever you see in terms of, that means it wants you to get the thing that comes before it by itself. So the thing that comes before it is k. So it wants us to get k by itself. So first, I'm going to always move the farthest guy first. So I've got a 5 and I got a 14j. Well, the 14j is farther from the k. So I'm going to move the 14j first. So it's being added, so I'm going to subtract 14j from both sides. And I get 5k equals m minus 14j. And now I got to move the 5. So the 5 is being multiplied. So the opposite of multiplication is division. So I'm going to divide both sides by 5. And I get k equals m minus 14j over 5. And that is A. Yep. So these take a lot of practice. They're called this is what they call them these days, literal equations. You can find worksheets and practice problems on this very easily if you Google it. Like literal equations, algebra 1. You usually see at least one question like this on the SAT. So this is worth practicing to know how to do. I think I don't use a CAS calculator, but I think some CAS calculators can do this. So if you do have like a TI Inspire or something, that might be worth learning how to do. But yeah. All right, this to me might be the hardest one in this section, in this module. So very first thing, I'm going to draw a right triangle. And it doesn't tell you where the right angle goes. So what I would do is I would label the hypotenuse where the hypotenuse goes. So in this case, the hypotenuse is the longest side. So that's 584. And then I was like, oh, the 584 is TR. So why don't I put a T and an R on both ends of that side? And then I'll put the S where the other guy goes. Okay, so now I can label the rest. ST equals 384. And RS equals 440. Okay, so now it wants us to find, it says this is called a similarity statement. So the order in which the letters come tell you the angles that are equal and the sides that are proportional. So like R is equal to U, second set, S is equal to V, third set, T is equal to U. And you see they kind of tell you that in the question. It says S corresponds to V, T corresponds to W. So you got to remember that similar triangles, all the corresponding side lengths are proportional and all the corresponding angles are equal. So this one is lots of people forget about the angles part. This one is testing you on the fact that corresponding angles are equal. So you don't have any of the side lengths for the other triangle, so you can't figure out what the side lengths of the other triangle are. So to find tan of W, you have to recognize that W is equal to T because they both come last in the similarity statement. It even tells you T corresponds to W, right? So angle W is equal to angle T. So if we want to find tan of W, we could find it by doing tan of T because T is equal. So T is up here. I'm going to circle it so that I look in the right spot. And now we're going to do tan. SOHCAHTOA. So tangent is opposite over adjacent. Opposite over adjacent. So the opposite is 440 and the adjacent is 384. So we're going to do 440 over 384. And you can simplify that on your calculator. And we get 55 out of 48. And that is answer choice D. Okay, awesome. All right, so yeah, don't ever forget that you gotta got to keep this similarity statement stuff in mind. The order that the letters come in is really important. And you got to remember that the corresponding side lengths are proportional, but also you got to remember that the corresponding angles are equal. Alrighty. Okay, so now we're going to get started with the math module 2B. So this is the harder module, so you may have just skipped the first part and came straight here. So let's get started. Okay, so we have to combine the like terms. So see how x squared and x squared matches? That means we can combine them. So 9 plus 7 is 16, so 16x squared plus 9x. And we see that is answer choice D. So the powers, the letters and powers have to match for two terms to be like terms. So when you have two like terms, you can combine them via addition or subtraction, depending on what the problem looks like. Okay, so what percentage of the beads are silver? So percent of is equal to part over the whole times 100. So we have 828,000 over 900,000 times 100. And we get, if you put that in your calculator, you get 92%. And that is answer choice D. All right, so for this one, what we're going to do is first we're going to distribute. So we get 6t minus 20 plus t equals 40 plus 4t. And that gives us 7t minus 20, combine the like terms. I'm going to rewrite it as 4t plus 40 just because that's easier for me. Subtract 4t from both sides, and I get 3t minus 20 equals 40. And add 20, and I get 3t equals 60. So you could just stop there. You see it's asking for 3t, so you could just stop there. So the answer is 60. But even if you didn't realize that, let's say you divided by 3 and you got 20, you could then just plug it back into 3t and do 3 times 20, and you'd still get 60. So, I don't know, moral of the story, just if you see that you're done, just stop. Okay, great. Let's look at 4. Okay. So this one, if you went through all the trouble of expanding all these guys, you would get a value for x. So you could do like 5x plus 20 equals 4x plus 16 plus 29. And if you combine all those and moved them over, you would get x equals 16 plus 29, then minus 20, which would be 22. And then you could do no, 16 plus 29. No, 16 plus 29 minus 20. You'd get 25. And then you could do x plus 4, 25 plus 4, and you would get 29. But they're just like with all of these expression questions, see how the answer is an expression? There's a shortcut. So what you can do is you can subtract 4x plus 4 from both sides. And then you would get just 1x plus 4 equals 29. And 1 times x plus 4 is just x plus 4. So x plus 4 equals 29. That's another way you could have done it. Might have saved you just a little bit of time if you noticed that quote unquote shortcut. Alrighty. So 5. So the neighborhood consists of a 2-hectare park, 35-hectare. Okay. Okay. So the this guy has units of trees. So every term in the equation has to have the same units. So if this has units of trees, that must mean this guy has units of trees, and this guy has units of trees. Okay. So it's asking about the interpretation of x. Okay. So first of all, I see x is tied to the 2, and the 2 describes the park. So the answer choice must mention the park. So this is wrong and this is wrong. So now, is it the average number of trees per hectare, or is it the park? The total number of trees in the park? Well, um, 2 hectare times the units of x, and we want trees. That would have to be trees per hectare to make the units of hectare cancel and get trees. So x must have units of trees per hectare. And it must also be talking about the park. So the correct answer is A. So I'm going to show you all of these answer choices talk about something in the question. They're just not talking. You have to pick out the one that it's asking you about. So A is describing X. B is describing Y. C is describing the total number of trees in the park. So that would be 2 times X. And then the total number of trees in the residential area, that would be 35Y. So you see, they're using correct interpretations of different things to try to confuse you. Okay. So doing this kind of unit analysis off to the side can be really helpful. You definitely want to know how to do these because they ask these questions a lot. All right, let's keep going. Okay, so what I did was that I set up a ratio, the ratio of length to width. So length to width, or at length over width, is 35 over 10. And then it says the width increases by 7 units. So the width is now 17. And the new length I don't know. So I'm going to put X. And I'm going to cross multiply. So 35 times 17 is 595. And 10 times X is 10X. Now I divide both sides by 10 and I get X equals 59.5. But remember, it's asking how much does it change by. So you have to do 59.5 minus the original length, which is 35, and you get positive 24.5. Okay, so that means, so these ones are wrong. And positive means it went up, right? So it increased. So the answer is B. So always remember that if you see A to B or A colon B, remember you could rewrite it as A over B. And not always, but a lot of times that's the easiest way. At least that's the easiest in my opinion. And then when you set up a proportion like this, all you got to do is cross multiply. All right, let's keep going. Okay, so again, if you see in terms of, you want to get the thing before it by itself. So we want to get n by itself. So first I'm going to subtract 9. And these are called literal equations. So I'm going to do p minus 9 equals 14 over n. And And then I'm going to multiply both sides by n, so I get n times p minus 9 equals 14. And now I'm going to divide both sides by p minus 9 because it's being multiplied, and the opposite of multiplication is division. So we're going to divide by p minus 9, and we're going to divide by p minus 9. And I get n equals 14 over p minus 9. And that is answer choice D. Okay, yep. You're always going to get a question about this, literal equations. I would look up a worksheet or go on Khan Academy and practice these a whole bunch, or practice it out of an algebra book, because they're always going to ask you one about this. And there's no set way to do it every time. It just gets easier with practice. All right, this one was on the previous tests. So notice that the previous module. So notice that we went from 24 to 4. So what we're going to do is, to get from 24 to 4, we're going to divide by 6. So we're going to divide the top by 6, and we're going to divide the bottom by 6. And we get 4 over x plus 7. And it's 4 over x plus b, so b is equal to 7. And that's it. Okay, so you have to remember the circle equation. X minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared, where h comma k is the center and r is the radius. So I can tell by looking at the equation of circle A that r squared is equal to 4. So that means the square root of 4, which is 2, is the radius. So now it says circle B has a radius that is 2 times the radius of circle A. So that means the radius of B is 4. So now the r squared at the end of the equation is 4 squared, which is 16. So the equation should read x plus 5 squared plus y minus 5 squared equals 16. So k is 16. They ask questions about this all the time. You got to know the circle equation. They don't, for whatever reason, they do not give it to you on the formula sheet. Okay? So you got to know how to do it. Okay, so we've got 81 shares, 81 employees, so we need 81 shares, and we're going to multiply that by the price per share. Let's call that P. And then we're also going to multiply it by a 7% sales tax. So a sales tax is always a percent increase because you have to pay more, right? Think about like when you tip your waiter at a restaurant, you have to pay more. That's a percent increase. So when you do the percent multiplier for an increase, you have to multiply by 1 plus the decimal. And when you do it for a decrease, you have to multiply by 1 minus the decimal. So 7% as a decimal, just like we did before, we're going to do 7 divided by 100 on our calculator, and we get 0.07. So we just talked about how this is an increase. So we're going to do 1 plus the decimal. So 1 plus 0.07, and I get 1.07. So we're going to multiply this by 1.07. And it says the total budget after tax is 14,000. So this has to be less than or equal to 14,000. Okay, so 81 times 1.07 is 86.67. And now we have to solve for P because it wants to know the price per chair. So 14,000 divided by 86.67 gives us approximately 161.53. So the chairs can at most cost 161.53. if this percent multiplier stuff I was just talking to you about, if this is new to you, you really got to look up a worksheet or go on Khan Academy or something and practice doing this over and over and over again until it becomes second nature, because they ask about this all the time. And remember, a sales tax is always a percent increase. All right, let's keep going. We're almost done. Okay, so this is another linear quadratic system. What I like to do is I like to just get y by itself and then set them equal. So I'm going to make this guy y equals negative 8x minus 11. And I'm going to make this guy y equals negative 2x squared plus 341. And now I'm just going to set them equal. So no, I'm going to make it, I take it back. I'm going to make it 2x squared minus 341. Subtract the 341 to the other side. Yeah, that's what I wanted. Okay, so now we're going to substitute for y. That's always the strategy for these guys. Substitute for y, these linear quadratic systems. We're going to substitute for y. Well, now that I've got y equal on both of them, I can just set them equal, right? So y equals y, right? 2x squared minus 341 equals negative 8x minus 11. Get all the terms to one side, just like any quadratic equation. So we're going to do 2x squared plus 8x. And then negative 341 plus 11, that's negative 330, equal to 0. And I really would not solve this guy by hand. I would use the graphing calculator. You really should have some quadratic solver on your calculator. The TI-84, you don't even need to install a program for the TI-84 plus CE. It can already do it natively. I just use the program out of convenience. Okay, so let's go to standard form. 2, 8, and negative 330. So the roots, the solutions are 11 and negative 15. All right. That made it much easier, didn't it? And okay, so this one's wrong, this one's wrong, this one's wrong. It must be negative 15. That's the only one. 11 would be an acceptable answer, but you see 11 is not one of the answer choices. So it must be negative 15. Great. Let's keep going. Okay, so this one I'm going to distribute, and I get 150x minus 90, and then we also get 150x minus 90. So they have the same slope and the same y-intercept, and I was talking about this earlier in the video. Whenever you see that, it means they have infinitely many solutions. Whenever any equation looks the same on both sides, it has infinitely many solutions. But okay, so the answer is C. And remember, linear systems can only have 0 solution, 1 solution, or infinitely many. So 2 is just impossible. Even if you didn't understand the question at all, 2 is wrong. It has to have 0, 1, or infinitely many. Great, let's keep going. That one wasn't so bad. Okay, so one of the equations you have to know is how to find the vertex from factored form. So what you do is you use this equation. H equals S plus T divided by 2. What this means is to find the x-coordinate of the vertex H, what you do is you average the roots. So when you have 2 roots, to find the x-coordinate of the vertex, you just add them up and divide by 2 anytime you have 2 roots. So this one has 2 roots, or 2 x-intercepts. So H is the x-coordinate of the vertex, which is negative 3. And then S is the x-coordinate of the first x-intercept, so negative 17 over 4. And then T we don't know. So now you just got to solve this equation. So -6 equals -17 over 4 plus t. And now I'm just going to add 17 over 4 to both sides. And I get t equals -7 over 4. So the only one with -7 over 4 is b. So it must be b. So remember before we talked about h equals -b over 2a? Well, you also want to know h equals s plus t over 2. So anytime you have two roots, two x-intercepts in a quadratic, you add them up and divide by 2 to get the x-coordinate. That's what this equation is saying. You average them. Think about it, right? See how if I draw a quadratic like this, see how the vertex is in between? It's like right in the middle of the two roots. So we average them to get the middle. That's where that comes from. Anyway, yeah, you got to know that equation. This was basically it's like a fact check kind of question. You know, it's like if you knew the equation, easy peasy. If you don't know the equation, it's going to be really hard. Okay, so really common question here. So first we need to figure out the equation of the line in the picture. So the y-intercept is 2, and if you pick out 2 points and calculate the slope, you're going to get -1/4. And you can kind of tell by looking at the answer choices that the slope is -1/4 because they all say -1/4, right? So so this equation is y equals -1/4 x plus 2. And it says the graph of y equals f of x plus 14 is shown. So if we want f of x, what we have to do is we have to you see, we have to kind of take away 14 to make it go away. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to subtract 14. And we get y equals -1/4 x minus 12. Really, really tricky. Lots of people probably would have rushed through this and added 14 and put b. But you have to make sure that you're understanding it correctly, that you're moving in the direction they want you to move. Okay, great. Next question. Okay, another pretty much fact check kind of question. So this is asking us, when will the quadratic have more than one real solution? So I wrote that on the board earlier in the video. The discriminant is b squared minus 4ac. And so a equals 64, b is equal to b, and c is equal to 25. And remember, when d is less than 0, there's no real solution. When d is equal to 0, there's one real solution. And when d is greater than 0, there's two real solutions. You just have to have that memorized for the test. Okay, so b squared minus 4, and then a is 64, and then c is 25. So that gives us -4 times 64 times 25, which is -6400. And remember, it says more than one real solution, so that means it must be greater than 0. So b squared, if I add 6400 to both sides, I get b squared is greater than 6400. Okay, now all you can do is plug all these in and see which one gives you a number bigger than 6400. This one doesn't, this one doesn't, this one doesn't. If you plug in -91 in parentheses and square it, you get 8,281, which is certainly bigger than 6,400. So that's our answer. Okay, we did this one before. I'll do it again really quickly. This was on the module 2a. So the x-intercept, anytime you want to find an x-intercept, you plug in y equals 0. So 7x plus 2y, negative 31. So 7x, 2 times 0, I mean. So 7x equals negative 31. So x equals negative 31 over 7. And remember, they called the x-intercept a. So we're going to call it a as well. And then the y-intercept, we're going to plug in x equals 0. So 7 times 0 plus 2y equals negative 31. So 2y equals negative 31. So y equals negative 31 divided by 2. And remember, they called the y-intercept b in the question. So we're going to call it b as well. And now it wants us to find b over a. So that's negative 31 over 2 over negative 31 over 7. And we're going to type that in our calculator, and we get 7 over 2. And that is the answer. So always remember, anytime you got to find an x-intercept, you're going to plug in y equals 0. Anytime you're going to find a y-intercept, you're going to plug in x equals 0. All right, another tricky one. Another linear quadratic system. There's a lot of these in these questions. I mean, at least if you do both the modules like I did, not everyone's going to do both of them. So, let's see for this one. So we have a linear quadratic system, and again, there's a couple ways you can do this. You could substitute for y. It doesn't really matter. You could get y by itself in one of them. You could get x by itself in one of them. What I did was I just saw that, oh, there's a 2x. And wait a minute, this is not a linear quadratic system at all. This is a linear system. Both of them are lines. So I'm gonna, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna get both of these in standard form. So I'm gonna put the first one, 4x subtract 10y, negative 6 minus 10 is negative 16y equals 2. And for the other one, I'm gonna get negative 2x plus ty equals 1/2. And remember that table I gave you before? Well, there's another table if it's in standard form. And it goes something like this: no solution. Hopefully I have this right and I don't mess up. Okay, so one solution means a over d is not equal to b over e. Infinitely many means a over b equals, no, a over d equals b over e equals c over f. And no solution means a over d equals b over e, which is not equal to c over f. So this one says no solution, right? So to solve this question, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a proportion with a over d equals b over e, because that's true for no solution. So 4 over negative 2 equals negative 16 over t. Cross multiply 4t equals 32. So t equals 8. There was a lot of ways to do this one. You could put it in slope-intercept form. You could substitute. You could set up a proportion like I did. There's a lot of ways to do this. If you don't like this table that I wrote over here, what I recommend you do is you get y by itself for both of them, put it in slope-intercept form, and then compare it using the table I talked about previously. No solution is same slope, different y-intercept. One solution is different slopes. And infinitely many is same slope, same y-intercept. Okay, so the answer is 8. Okay, so anytime you see these words, an isosceles right triangle. So that means it's a right triangle with 2 equal legs. In other words, it's a 45, 45, 90. Anytime you see isosceles right triangle, that's what you should be thinking of. Um, I can't click on it and show you, but if you click on the reference sheet, the reference thing, up here, the special right triangles are in there, so you don't even need to memorize them. So it looks something like this. So 45 degrees, 45 degrees, S, S, S root 2. Isosceles right triangle is just a fancy name for a 45, 45, 90. So anytime you see that on the test, you should immediately be thinking 45, 45, 90. Okay, so now it says it has a hypotenuse of 58. So do you see how the hypotenuse is equal to S root 2? So that means that S, if we divide both sides by root 2, we get S equals 58 over root 2. So this is 58 over root 2, and this is 58 over root 2. And now let's say you didn't want to do the radical simplification. What you could do is you could just type in your calculator 58 plus 58 over root 2 plus 58 over root 2, and then type in all the answer choices and see which one is the same. I'm going to go through it just because I think it's something you should know, but you could, at this point now, you could just use your calculator and get the answer. So the perimeter is equal to 58 plus 58 over root 2. So what we're going to do is we're going to multiply by root 2 over root 2 to simplify that. And we'll do the same thing with this one. So 58 over root 2. And we're going to multiply by root 2 over root 2. So we get 58 over 2. We get 58 root 2 over 2. And 58 over 2 is 29. So 29 root 2 plus 29 root 2. So we get 58 plus 58 root 2. Again, you could have just typed it in your calculator and then compared the decimal to typing in all the answer choices. It doesn't matter. Whatever works for you. You probably want to know how to simplify radicals like this just because it comes up a lot. All right, we're almost done. All right, so for this one, I just typed this in my graphing calculator, the program I was showing you before, and I get y equals 64x minus 128. So that means A is 64 and B is negative 128. So if you do A minus B, that's 64 minus negative 128, which is 64 plus 128, which is 192. I'm going to go through how to do this by hand just for the sake of it, even though I don't think you need to know how to do it necessarily. Like I said, there might occasionally be a question with letters in it, but I really think you don't, you should really look into getting a calculator program, especially the one from the College Panda. It's really helpful. Or from another tutor or from a website. Okay, so I don't have the y-intercept. I have the x-intercept, but I don't have the y-intercept. So I got to do all this manually. So I got to find the slope. That's the first step. Y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So I'm going to use the bottom 2 points. So I'm going to do 64 minus 0 over 3 minus 2. And I get 64. Now the next step, that's step 1. The next step to find the equation of a line is to write the partial equation. So y equals 64x plus b. So the partial equation means you know the slope, but you don't know the b. You have part of it. That's where the name comes from. Okay, so now I'm going to plug in any point I want and solve for b. So I'm going to use 2 comma 0. So 0 equals 64 times 2 plus b. 64 times 2 is 128. Subtract it to the other side, and I get b equals negative 128. And step 3 and 4 is to write the partial equation. Write the full equation. So I get y equals 64x minus 128. And now I go up here and do everything we just did. Again, you see, much faster if you have the calculator program, right? So that might be something you want to look into getting. All right, we're almost done. There's some hard ones left, but we're almost done. Okay, this one is a pain. So the sum of the 9 integers, you could just add them up on your calculator if you want, is 378. So the mean of the 10 integers is going to be 378 plus x, the 10th integer, over 10. And it says that that mean is greater than 42. So if you solve this, you multiply by 10, 378 plus x is greater than 420, and then you subtract 10, and you get x is greater than 42. Now, it also says that all the integers are less than 60. So x must be between 42 and 60. And the mean, 378 plus x over 10, it says that the mean, this is really important. If you miss this, you can't answer it. The mean is an integer. So the mean must be a whole number as well. So you can just guess and check. So 42 doesn't count and 60 don't count because it doesn't say equal to. So you start with 43 and you can just keep guessing and checking until you get a whole number for the mean. Hopefully you're seeing, oh, 378. For it to be divisible by 10, it has to end in 0. So it must end in 2. So the only number that ends in 2 between 42 and 60 is 52. So x must be 52. And that is the answer. Tricky question. And let's check one more time. 378, so it's between 42 and 60, good. And 378 plus 52 divided by 10. Okay, so the mean would be 43. So the mean is an integer, and it's greater than 42. So we're good. All right. Okay, this is a tricky question. I actually did this one too fast, and I got this one wrong. So I'm going to try to steer you right. It's very similar to what we just did, actually. So the charge for each additional person, we were just talking about many times that is the slope, right? Like a rate that you're being charged. So the slope is 14, and it says $21 for the first 25 people. So if you multiply that, that's a total of $525. So when n is equal to 25, they charge $525. So now you just have to find an equation with this slope and this point. So we're going to do exactly what we did before. Write the partial equation. So y equals 14x plus b, and then plug in the point. 525 equals 14 times 25 plus b. Okay, 14 times 25, that's 350. And then I'm going to subtract 350 over to the other side. And I get 175 equals b. So the equation is y equals 14x plus 175. Man, that is tricky. Okay. What they did in the answer key, and I don't normally read the answer key, but I did for this one because I got it wrong. And what they did in the answer key was they like wrote it like this. They did y equals 14 times n minus 25 plus 525 because it says n is greater than or equal to 25. So you can kind of view 525 as your starting point, as your y-intercept, if instead of x, so you see how like where x normally goes, they put x, or where n normally goes, they put n minus 25. So you see, as long as you replace the x with n minus 25, you'll get the right answer, but everyone's going to forget to do that, right? So if you do it just 14x plus 525, then you get b, and this is wrong. Okay. Um, so I don't know. I actually think the way on the left is more confusing than the way I did it on the right. Even though the way on the right is more work, I feel like it forces you to use skills that you already know, finding the equation of a line. On the left, it's faster, but I feel like students might be prone to messing that up. Anyway, so anytime they give you a slope and a point, you find the equation of the line by writing the partial equation and then plugging in the point. That's what we did here. You could have also just plugged in the slope and the point into the calculator program, and you would get the answer as well. But the important thing was you had to recognize that the point was 25, comma 525. And to figure that out, you had to do 21 times 25 because you're doing $21 per person for 25 people. So you multiply those together. All right, very tricky question. All right, last one. It's another kind of tricky one. Okay, so first of all, there are 3 criteria for similarity that you need to know for the test. So angle, angle. So that means 2 sets of corresponding angles are equal. S, 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 and I like to put squiggles on them to differentiate from congruence. So S squiggle, S squiggle, S squiggle. And that is when all 3 sets of sides are proportional. And the last one is S squiggle, A, S squiggle. So in this one, you have 2 sets of proportional sides surrounding. So let's say this is 2 and this is 4 and this is 3 and this is 6. They're proportional. See how they're both multiplied by 2? But they have to be surrounding that equal angle. They have to be on the edges of that equal angle. Very similar to SAS for congruence. Okay, so you have to know all 3 of these. They've been asking. They used to never ask about these, but they've been asking about these a ton recently. Okay, so you really want to know this. All right. Anyway, so we got to draw the 2 triangles. Let me show my picture. I'm gonna make a picture. So remember, similarity statements. We always want to underline that. So the order that the letters come in is important. Okay, so I'm going to do L, M, N. It doesn't matter, but just make sure that you do the correct order on the second drawing as well. So see, I'm going to do R, and then I'm going to move in the same direction to the left. So R, S, T. Okay, so L and R each have measure of 60. And then so this one has measure of 60. Nope. Oh, dang. Let me fix this. Okay. And this one has measure of 60. And then it says ln equals 10 and RT equals 30. Okay, so the proportion is times 3. Okay, so now we have to go and consider each. The only way to do this is process of elimination. Is the only way. Okay, so you have to just guess. So I'm just going to go in order. I'm going to go through all of them. Okay, so MN equals 7 and ST equals 7. Well, those aren't proportional, and that also would not give me SSS or SAS anyway. So that's wrong. Okay, MN equals 7 and ST equals 21. Okay, so I'm going to put the reason for this is it's not proportional. It doesn't match the proportion they gave us, the 10 and the 30. Okay, 7 and 21. Okay, this matches the proportion they gave us. It's times 3, right? But we have like SSA. And remember that SSA is not one of the similarity criteria. So it's proportional, but it doesn't, but there's no criteria met. So this is also wrong. Okay, the measures of angle M and S are 70 and 60. Okay, so M is 70 and S is 60. Okay, so that would mean if you do 180 minus that, the other one is 50. And the other one in the previous triangle is, another triangle is 60. Okay, so here we're looking for if two angles are the same, right? We do not have two angles the same. We just have the first 60. The 70 and the 50 doesn't match the 60 or the 60. So that's wrong. So no criteria met as well. So we were really looking for angle, so no angle. Okay, so M is 70 and T is 50. So this doesn't seem like it's angle, but if you figure out the other angles, so 180 minus 70 minus 60, that gives you 50. And then 180 minus 60 minus 50, that gives you 70. Oh, so see, we've got these two and these two. So that's angle. As a matter of fact, we have all three equal. You don't need to know all three, but we've got angle. So the triangles are similar. So this is our answer, D. Just give me 1 second. Let me fix that. So the other ones, they don't. So these three similarity, you got to draw a picture, and then these three similarity criteria that I just drew: angle, SSS, and SAS. You got to know those like the back of your hand. They've been asking that a lot recently. Okay, time for the outro. So I hope you found this video helpful. I will be making many more videos like this in the future. My goal is to make a video for every single digital SAT math question. And so I hope you found it helpful. Please, if you are interested in tutoring, I tutor all sections of the SAT. And I recently scored a 1500 plus. And I've been tutoring for at least 3 years. So if you are interested in my tutoring services, or you just want to connect with me to ask me more questions about the SAT, I'm going to put my website in the description so that you can connect with me if you're interested in learning more. Okay, awesome. Sounds good. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for coming to my channel. Have a great rest of your day and good luck with your studying.